Welcome back. Let us talk about Metasploit framework. We already mentioned that we will use this tool a lot to exploit different targets and their vulnerabilities. But there are a few things we need to learn first about it before we get to use it. Remember when I told you that Metasploit framework offers us thousands of exploits that we can use for Windows, macOS or Linux? While that is true, Metasploit offers us a whole lot more things that we can use besides the exploits. Matter of fact, exploits are just one of 7 modules that we can get with Metasploit. Besides them, we also get payloads, auxiliary modules, encoders, evasion modules, NOPs, and post-exploitation modules. If you're new to all of this, you probably have no idea what each of them are. Don't worry, we will explain it right now. First, to navigate to the Metasploit framework directory, we can type cd/user/share and then Metasploit-framework. You can just type meta and then tab it to autocomplete it. If I press here enter, and if I type ls right here in the Metasploit framework directory, we're going to see quite a few things. One of the most important things right here is this MSF console. And this is an executable file. This is our program. If we wanted to run Metasploit, we would just type MSF console in the terminal and it would open the Metasploit framework. The MSF Venom is also very important. This is a tool that we will use to generate a payload or a shell that we use to control the target machine with. But for this video, what we want to explain is this modules directory. If we change to that directory, so cd modules, and I type ls here, we will see those 7 modules that I mentioned. Let's talk about each one of them a little bit. We're already familiar with exploits, right? Let's go to that directory first. So cd exploits. And just to remind ourselves that an exploit module or program executes a sequence of commands to target a specific vulnerability in a system or application. It takes advantage of that vulnerability in order to provide us an access to that machine. There are a few different types of exploits, such as for example buffer overflow, code injection, web application exploits. But what is also important to mention right here regarding Metasploit is that once we type ls inside of this exploits directory, you will see these exploits are split into different groups. We got Windows exploits, OS X exploits, Linux exploits, Firefox exploits, and many others as well. And if we go to any of them, for example, let's go to Windows exploits, and I type ls right here, we will get even more division of exploits. All of the Windows exploits that we have are divided into a bunch of other submodules such as FTP, firewall, SMTP, SMB, and others. And all of them contain exploits for those specific things. If we navigate to, for example, HTTP Windows exploits, so let's go there. And I clear the screen, type ls right here. We will see there is a lot of them for the HTTP. And this .rb that all of these files have is just an extension for Ruby language. All of the exploits in Metasploit framework are coded inside of our Ruby language. And each one of these programs right here exploits a different vulnerability. If you were, for example, interested in how some of these work, you could open the code of an exploit using Nano Editor. Let's see, for example, this one. If I nano it, it will open the code of this exploit. And if you know Ruby language, you could figure out how this exploit works, right? It also gives us a description right here. So this exploits a stack buffer overflow in the Webster HTTP server. The server and source code was released within an article from the Microsoft System Journal in February 1996, titled Write a Simple HTTP. So this is an old exploit. But you can do this for any file that you want. You can just open it and see the code of that specific exploit. And that's how they are stored in Kali Linux. Let's also mention other modules that exist besides these. So if I go back to the modules directory and type ls. Let's next talk about the auxiliary modules. So if I change directory to auxiliary and I type ls right here, then we will see that auxiliary modules are also split into different categories, as we can see right here. And an auxiliary module does not execute a payload like an exploit module does. It is used to perform different actions such as scanning, fuzzing, or denial of service attacks. These modules can sometimes be used in first two stages of penetration test, as there is a lot of them that perform fingerprinting and vulnerability scanning. If we go to one of these submodules, for example, let's go to sniffer submodule. If I type cd sniffer, type ls, well, it seems that there is only one sniffer in Metasploit. And we can see again it is also coded in Ruby language because of the .rb extension. If we go to a different auxiliary submodule, for example, let's go to this one, which is spoofing. So let's go to the spoofers, clear the screen, type ls. We can see they're also divided into even more submodules based on what it is spoofing. So it can spoof ARP requests, it can spoof DNS, it can spoof MDNS, and others as well. And all of these spoofers we can use for our attacks if we need to. Good. Those are the auxiliary modules. Now, you can always explore others as well if you want to check out what different files this module has. But we're going to continue and we're going to cover the next module from the Metasploit framework, which is the post-exploitation module. And if I change directory to the post-exploitation module, clear the screen and type ls, this module is used, as its name says, after exploiting the target. Usually, they are used to gather or steal information from target's device. That information could be files, saved passwords, dumping hashes, enumerating other services and applications on the target, and many other things we can do with post-exploitation modules. After you type ls, you will see that they are mostly split the same as the exploits. If we go to Windows post-exploitation modules and type ls right here, we will see different post-exploitation submodules that have different purposes, such as gathering information, such as escalating privileges. And these escalating privileges simply means if we exploit the target as a regular user on that machine, we would always want to try to escalate our privilege to become an administrator or a root account. We can also see VLAN post-exploitation modules, and I believe this would be used to steal saved wireless passwords to the access points that the target was connected to. Okay, you can explore the others as well if you want to, and let's talk about the others as well, so we can go through all of them real fast so you can get a pretty good understanding of what all of these modules do. And the next one that we will talk about is also really important, and that is payloads. If I change directory to payloads, clear the screen and type ls, and hopefully you remember that payload is something we deliver to the target with an exploit in order to control that machine. And in this payloads directory, we can see it is split in three different subdirectories: singles, stagers, and stages. What does this even mean? Well, singles are payloads that are completely standalone. A single payload can be something as simple as adding a user to the target system or running some other application. Stagers set up a network connection between the attacker and victim and are designed to be small and reliable. And lastly, stages are payload components that are downloaded by stagers modules. These payload stages can provide us with advanced features with no size limits, such as, for example, different command shells or meterpreter shells. And meterpreter is something that we mentioned for the first time. Meterpreter shell is also something that we will use a lot. It is similar to the command shell, but with a bunch of other options as well besides executing commands. We can download files, upload files, record microphone conversation, run webcams on target machine, take screenshots of their desktop, and many other things we can do with the meterpreter. So once we are exploiting a target, meterpreter is usually what we want to run on that target after an exploit. If I go to stagers directory right here, so cd stagers, clear the screen, type ls, and if I, for example, go to Windows stagers, type ls, here we can see different ways of establishing connection. Remember when we talked about two different types of shells in the last video? Well, here they are. Here we can establish a connection either by binding to a port or by listening and creating a reverse shell connection. They are further divided into, for example, reverse HTTP, reverse UDP, and reverse TCP. And out of all of these that we have right here, we will almost always use reverse TCP. So for now we know that two main things we will combine in a payload is reverse TCP connection and a meterpreter shell, because that two combined give us much more options to do with the target. Okay, great. Now, if you don't understand some of this, don't worry once again. This is something that you will fully understand once we get into the practical examples. For now, we're left to explain 3 more modules, and we're going to go quickly through them since they are less important than the ones that we already covered. And those are the evasion modules, encoders, and NOPs. Now, let's go with encoders first. Encoders are something that helps us to evade antivirus detection. How exactly? Well, even though we call our payload a shell or a meterpreter, what it is to antiviruses and other people, it is just a simple malware or Trojan or a virus. That's why, with the help of encoders, we can encode our payload and make it less detectable by some antivirus vendors. These are not that useful anymore since they are known to almost all antiviruses. They can, however, help us bypass some of them. And evasion modules do pretty much the same thing. And if I change directory to them, so cd evasion, you will see that there are evasion modules only for Windows. And they are used to bypass Windows Defender. If I change my directory right here, type ls, we will see different Windows Defender files that we use in order to bypass the Windows Defender. However, since Windows Defender recently got an update, I believe many of these don't work anymore. But don't worry, we will see later in the course different techniques that we can use to bypass antiviruses and execute our payload. And the last thing that we got are NOPs. NOPs can be a little bit hard to understand. What a NOP is an instruction for the processor to do nothing. Once a processor reads a NOP instruction, it does absolutely nothing. And I know what you're thinking, what is the purpose of this for us? Well, these NOPs are useful in buffer overflows to allocate a lot of space in memory before the payload executes. By the way, NOP stands for no operations, and if you ever programmed in assembly before, you will be familiar with this. But don't worry, for now, NOPs are not that important for us. Okay, that was a lot to take for one single video, but all of this will be more clear once we start exploiting our target, and trust me, we're really close to that. We just need to explain the usage of Metasploit in the next video real quick, and after it, we will perform our first exploits. So get ready, and I will see you in the next video.